I'm here to review Untold Valor, Forgotten Stories of American Bomber Crews Over Europe in World War II, written by Rob Morris. I would say what initially attracted me to this book was the front cover, to be honest. The planes and just like the title, I guess, really caught my attention. I've always been interested in fighter pilots and bomber pilots and just air warfare in general. Also, the title, Untold Valor, it just implies that it's something that you haven't heard before, which was something that I was really excited about in regards to World War II. Now, this book, in fact, is actually a collection of interviews taken by Rob Morris of World War II bomber pilot veterans, Americans. And he basically just went all over the country interviewing bomber pilot after bomber pilot and getting their stories, their personal stories during the war. As I came to find out, many of these bomber pilots were actually shot down during combat and ended up in enemy hands, prisoners of war, POWs. One of my favorite stories from the book is actually about one of these prisoners of war. His name is Lyle Schaefer, and he was co-piloting his bomber, and they were on a mission, but they started getting shot by anti-aircraft. Lyle was forced to eject and free fall from 26,000 feet. He described it. He didn't have that free falling gut feeling that you would get on a roller coaster. He seemed like he was numb, and he said that he was so numb almost to the point that he almost died. He pulled his chute just within skyscraper's height, like a couple seconds later he would have been boom, splat, dead on the ground. But he pulled his parachute at the last second and he glided down to safety in enemy hands. He was picked up by soldiers, and he noticed that one of his co-pilots was picked up by civilians who started to brutally beat him in hatred. I never really pictured it, but the German civilians were just like us in a way. They were upset about us attacking their homeland just as much as we would be. And so once they got their hands on a pilot, they just went to town on him. That just stuck out to me. I'd never really thought of the German civilians in such a relatable way. Another one of my favorite stories from the book is about Hermann Goering's nephew named Werner Goering, and he was an American bomber pilot. Hermann Goering, if you don't know, is the head of the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, during World War II. And it was just really fun to hear that his nephew was going against him so directly. Werner Goering was a bomber pilot who would have shot down his uncle's soldiers in one of the ball turret guns, or even dropped bombs on them at one point. I think that this book is really well laid out, and it goes straight through. It just starts off with a short prologue, basically introducing the author and telling his story of how this book came to existence. He actually has done this exact same thing with the interviews and the personal stories for other World War II soldiers, not just bomber pilots, but this one is specifically focused on bomber pilots. Each chapter has a title, and almost every single one has more than one story, but some of them are more specific and the story is longer. But each are very detailed and realistic because they're just true, straight from the veterans. And I think that's what was my favorite thing about this book, is the authenticity and just like the raw nature of the veterans. I've always enjoyed hearing veterans talk about their war experiences, just because they're just cool. I don't know. They're wise, and they just know the world in a different way. And I really enjoyed reading their quotes. I would recommend this book to just about anyone who wants to know more about World War II. It's not a hard read. It's pretty basic vocabulary. I mean, it's not a kid's book, I could say, but anybody who wants to learn more about World War II and wants to know the more specific stories, it's definitely doable. It's an easy read, less than 300 pages, only 15 chapters, and there's a few pictures in the middle of the book showing some of the pilots' faces, as well as just certain reference photos that you might want to know. If you're looking for just like a broad story of the war as a whole, this book is not for you. But if you're looking to know more details and specifics from the war, you can get it here straight from the veterans. Brought to you by Rob Morris in Untold Valor.